Today we're going to talk about how AI assistants went from being these unpredictable parrots, just mimicking human language, to the genuinely helpful partners that we're all starting to use. It's a fantastic story about incredible power, a really deep problem, and a clever solution that basically changed everything.
So let's rewind to 2020. Researchers create this AI, and it's so good that you literally can't tell it's writing from a human's. It's a huge deal. But there was this fundamental problem. See, its goal wasn't to be a helpful assistant. Its only job was to predict the next word in a sentence. That's it. And that meant it could be brilliant one second, and then completely ignore you, make up facts, or spit out biased text the next.
So how did we get from there to here? Well, in this explainer, we're going to trace that exact evolution. We'll start with that first breakthrough AI, see the almost magical things it could do, and then we'll diagnose that core alignment problem. Then we'll get into the human-centered training that started to fix it. We'll even see a direct before and after, and wrap up by looking at the quest for AI alignment, which is still going on today.
All right, let's start at the beginning. We're talking about the dawn of a whole new kind of AI that kicked this entire journey off, a model called GPT-3.
So what is GPT-3? It's what we call a large language model, or LLM. Basically, it was trained on a giant slice of the internet, books, articles, you name it, just to learn the patterns of how we talk and write. But here is the absolute key to understanding everything that comes next. Its one single goal was to predict the most likely next word. That's all. A super simple objective that when you do it at a massive scale leads to some unbelievably complex results.
The real game changer with GPT-3 was something called in-context learning. All of a sudden, you didn't have to be a coder to get it to do things. You could just show it a couple of examples of what you wanted, right in the chat box, like, here are some scrambled words, now you do one, and it would just get the pattern and keep going. This ability to learn on the fly without needing to be totally retrained was absolutely revolutionary.
And this in-context learning led to some capabilities that were, frankly, mind-bending. It really felt like you were watching magic happen.
I mean, look at this. The model was a master at recognizing patterns. You could give it jumbled words, it would unscramble them. But even crazier, you could invent a totally new word, like farduddle, define it one time, and the model could just immediately use it perfectly in a sentence. It was like it was learning the rules to a game it had never seen before, in an instant.
The writing was so convincing that its own creators admitted back in 2020 that most people couldn't tell if they were reading something written by the AI or by a human. It wasn't just copying and pasting facts, it was writing with style. But, and this is a huge but, this incredible skill was hiding a very serious problem.
And that brings us to the absolute heart of the issue, the alignment problem. Because for all its power, GPT-3 was not a reliable partner. Not even close.
The problem was a total misalignment of goals. Remember, the AI's only job was to predict the next word based on what it saw on the internet. But what a user wants, what we want, is totally different, right? We want an AI to follow our instructions, to be helpful, to be honest, and not to say harmful things. Those two goals are not the same, and that gap is where everything started to go wrong.
And this misalignment? It had some pretty bad consequences. The model would just make things up all the time. Researchers call this hallucinating. Because it was trained on the whole internet, warts and all, it would sometimes generate bias or toxic stuff. It would often just ignore what you asked it to do because a different sentence was more statistically likely. And of course, it was a mirror for all the deep-seated biases in its training data.
And this wasn't just a hunch. You could see it in the data. This chart shows what happened when researchers analyzed the sentiment of text the model generated. As you can see, text connected to the word black consistently got a more negative score. Now, the AI isn't being malicious here. It's just a mirror, reflecting the patterns and biases it learned from the data we gave it. To build a true partner, this had to be fixed.
So this huge challenge, it required a completely new way of thinking. The solution was to actively train the AI using direct human feedback. And this was the key idea behind a new model that came to be known as Instruct GPT.
The method is called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF for short. It's kind of like a three-step process. First, in step 1, humans demonstrate what a good answer looks like by writing high-quality examples. The AI learns from those. Second, in step 2, the AI generates a few different answers and humans rank them from best to worst. This teaches the system what better actually looks like. And finally, in step 3, all that ranking data is used to train a separate reward model. You can think of it like an AI judge that learns to score answers based on what humans like. The main AI is then trained to write answers that get the highest possible score from that judge.
What this all did was fundamentally change the AI's objective. It wasn't just predict the next word anymore. The new mission, defined by humans, was to be helpful, honest, and harmless. The whole RLHF process was designed to steer the model toward those three things.
So, that's the theory. But did it actually work? Let's do a direct side-by-side comparison, because when you see the difference, it's pretty stunning.
This example says it all. On the left, you ask the original GPT-3 to write a specific story in French, and it just ignores you. It gives you some other story ideas instead. But now look at Instruct GPT on the right. It does exactly what you asked. It follows every constraint, frog, ancient Greece, French language, and puts it all together into a perfect response.
Okay, get ready for this next one, because it is wild. You ask GPT-3 about a cannonball and a pumpkin, and it just confidently makes up this nonsense about pumpkins being strong magnets. It has no connection to reality, it's just putting words together. But look at Instruct GPT. It's honest. It says, hey, I can't know for sure, and then gives you a range of realistic, plausible outcomes. This, right here, is the difference between a parrot and a partner.
And these weren't just a few cherry-picked examples. In blind tests, where people didn't know which model they were looking at, human testers preferred the answers from the new, aligned Instruct GPT a whopping 85% of the time. That is a clear, massive win for the human feedback approach.
So this was a huge breakthrough, a massive step forward. But it's really important to remember it was just one step on a much, much longer journey toward truly aligned AI.
You know, one of the most stunning discoveries was just how efficient this whole alignment thing was. This chart compares the computing power it took to train the original model versus what it took to align it. And as you can see, the alignment cost was just a tiny fraction, less than 2% of the original training cost. The takeaway is huge. Making AI more helpful wasn't about more brute force and bigger models. It was about smarter, human-guided training.
But, and this is super important, the researchers themselves are the first to say that this problem is not solved. These models can still be tricked into saying harmful or false things. In fact, since they're better at following instructions, sometimes they'll follow a bad instruction more precisely. And crucially, the model's sense of what's helpful, honest, and harmless is a direct reflection of the values of the specific group of people who trained it.
And that really leaves us with the biggest question of all, the one we're still grappling with today. We've managed to turn a powerful parrot into a more helpful partner by aligning it with human preferences. But that brings up a much harder question: whose preferences? As this technology gets woven into everything we do, the challenge isn't just going to be technical, it's going to be societal. We, all of us, have to figure out who gets to define what good AI behavior really is.